What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Showtime Meets Business, the podcast that's bringing the business to show business. I'm Luke.
And I'm Grace.
And this is Showtime
Meets Business.
This week, we have a very special episode for all you actors out there because we are sitting down with Michelle Colt, life and career coach for actors, entrepreneurs, and CEOs. Michelle has been on her journey of helping others for more than 15 years now and hosts seminars and private workshops geared towards getting her clients into peak performance mindset. She is the creator of the women's workshop, How to Have Courage and Let Your Light Shine and Be Seen, and Inside Game, which she teaches alongside her husband, Robert. And she has also coached Grace and I to boot. Welcome, Michelle.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. Lovely to be here.
Fantastic. So let's just dive right in. You started off as an actress. What inspired you to start coaching people?
Well, probably what inspired me the most was how in my own way I was. As a young woman, when I met my husband 27 years ago now, I weighed about 200 pounds, and I unfortunately dealt with debilitating anxiety. And about 16, 17 years ago, my husband and I discovered so many different aspects of what's really driving our nervous systems. And we also discovered at that time that many, many people don't even realize it, and they have tremendous fear around success.
For sure. Self-sabotage.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that ties into something really fascinating. It's something that Robert and I coined about 16 years ago. We all have these neural thermostats that are running the show.
Yeah.
Better known, I guess, for most people as comfort zones.
Okay.
And when you start to move out of your comfort zone, that's when the shit hits the fan and all of the chaos starts to come up.
What is the most common obstacle that you see creatives struggle with? And how do you help them overcome it?
Gosh, that's a really interesting question. Creatives tend to be very, very sensitive individuals. Okay. So the sensitivity is gorgeous in their art, in their acting, in their writing, or whatever it is, but it can really hinder them in taking action.
Yeah.
The fear of criticism, again, going back to what I said a couple of minutes ago, the fear of success, it's all interwound in this whole kind of sabotage ball for so many people.
And I love that term that you use, neural thermostat, because I think it's a much more poignant term than the term comfort zone. Tell our audience a little bit about what a neural thermostat is. Maybe you could give us an example.
Sure. Yeah, it's really fascinating because a lot of times the more sensitive the individual and the artist, the more tender the neural thermostat is. I was actually teaching a workshop in New York City last Sunday, and I was talking about survivor's guilt.
Okay.
Now, survivor's guilt does not just apply to Holocaust, the horrible, horrible atrocities that happened in that situation. It also applies to ourselves. When we start to have more success than, let's say, our parents did or certain friends and family, individuals will actually sabotage that success so they can feel connected with their friends and family. It's really, really fascinating. It gets played out in sibling rivalry. You know, you walk into a casting situation as an actor, and there's these wild dynamics that are being played out in the room. And it really ties into this. It's really about survival. That's what's driving the ego, the mind, and also any aspect of having more success. That's the main thing. All of our thoughts and emotions are being driven from a place of survival. So what I like to say is we're not wired to thrive. We're wired to just survive.
Wow. That's enlightening. That's very eye-opening. And I love that you bring up that aspect about maybe you connect with somebody on a negative level, right?
Yes.
Maybe it's a parent or a sibling, because that might be the only way that you know how or have ever connected with that person, and that can hold you back too.
Yeah, it's really interesting because what I always say is it doesn't matter whether you're really close to or you like your family. Unconsciously, your family biologically are the reason why you're here. And another thing that really ties into this is many individuals have been on the receiving end of envy from a parent. more of a narcissistic type of person usually.
Sure.
And that can be debilitating. You know, one of the reasons why I weighed 200 pounds was because as a young woman, I was terrified to be perceived as beautiful because I thought other women would hate me if they saw me as beautiful. And this was running unconsciously.
Sure.
Is this because you grew up that way?
Yeah, I had a very sweet mom for the most part, but she had a lot of envy for beautiful women. And back then, she didn't have the resources to look into this, let's say, with therapy or something like that. So she never talked about it. But I was given a very strong message that if I were beautiful,
You would be unliked.
unliked, unloved, and isolated.
Wow. Such a powerful and negative message to
Yep.
send to your child.
Yep.
Your latest workshop is titled How to Have Courage to Shine Your Light and Be Seen. How do you coach someone to have courage?
Well, the first part of all of this is awareness. Okay, you cannot sabotage yourself from a place of conscious awareness, something I talk a lot about. So the first thing that you're looking at here is to become more conscious. What are your defense mechanisms? What happens? Some people, when they're stressed out, they're in a high stakes situation, let's say in their careers, they go to a lot of fear. A lot of anxiety comes up, a lot of fear. Other individuals will be in a place where a lot of anger comes up and resentment and that kind of thing. For actors and actresses, some people will over-prepare, whereas other people will under-prepare. Now, a big part of all of this, too, is that the mind is literally organized in such a way, the way I like to say it, is it's constantly lamenting about the past. Then it's regurgitating that lament into the present moment and off into the future. And the most powerful place a person can ever be in both their personal or professional lives is in the present moment. So a lot of the techniques that I teach, a lot of what I talk about is helping people to simply get present.
Yeah.
Again, it's really understanding those trance states that you move into. There was somebody at my workshop in New York on Sunday, and he talked about how literally in high stakes acting situations, he starts to get confused and has amnesia. Type things come up, you know, where, you know, the director may be giving him a redirect on set or whatever it is, and it's as though the director is speaking gibberish.
Oh, my goodness.
So what's happening in that instance is his nervous system is literally producing amnesia and confusion as a way to stay safe, survive, but not thrive, because that acting role could put him on a whole nother level of success.
Sure.
It's very interesting. And I also happen to teach the shine work in private sessions for men.
Okay.
It's not just for women,
Okay.
because
Okay.
men need
Good to
help
know.
shining too.
Absolutely. What courses or workshops have you participated in to hone your ability to help others?
Yeah, I really take from a whole bunch of different modalities, you could say. The greatest influence for me is the work of a man by the name of Stephen Walensky. He's the founder and creator of quantum psychology. And what Stephen did was he took a lot of teachings and understandings from the East, and he combined it with Western psychology. I would say that that has been my biggest influence, is his work. And also his teacher, who was in India, Nisargadatta Maharaj, was an incredible sage in India that Stephen actually worked with for about 4 or 5 years, I believe. And so a lot of the teachings are Nisargadatta Maharaj's, and then Stephen took them, making them easier to understand, you know, here in the West. And it's really the foundation of much of what I teach and do.
Fantastic. Well, I'm glad you mentioned the quantum aspect about your work, because I remember that from our coaching sessions. And can you tell our audience a little bit about the quantum field and what techniques are beneficial for an individual to practice daily to enact it or activate it?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I mean, it's fascinating because so much of what was spoken about in the East has now been verified in neuroscience and quantum physics. So I think that the best thing to mention about that right now, and a lot of people know this, but they don't live it, and that's this aspect that on an energetic level, we are all absolutely and utterly connected. And the problem is when people are going into high stakes situations in their lives, they feel very separate. I always talk about how one of the greatest sources of suffering on the planet is a false sense of separation. But boy, oh boy, when it's coming up, it feels real. It feels real. So what's really helpful for individuals is practicing different techniques and exercise and meditation that really helps them feel connected and grounded. You know, a lot of times if a client comes in to see me and they say, you know, I've been having anxiety lately, been feeling depressed, the first thing I said is you need to start moving your body.
Okay.
It's such an important thing with mental well-being. And then again, whatever practices really help you to feel connected. I can actually share a technique that I came up with about 8 or 9 years ago. It's a very powerful technique. So literally what you can do right before you're going into a stressful situation for you, getting on an important phone call that's pushing into your nervous system, closing your eyes is helpful. And then what you're saying to yourself is, I am the ocean. Appearing as a wave, I am the ocean. We are the ocean, not the waves. We are the ocean.
Wow.
And if you really take that in and you really even visualize it, whatever works for you, what I'm told over and over again is that most people start to feel very, very connected. See, if you're going in for an acting job, let's say you're going in for your second callback, and the producers are in the room, and the director's in the room, and the casting director, what happens for most actors is they feel very separate. They feel judged, and they feel like, oh my God, I've got to get their approval, which, as we all know, is the worst way to go into the room.
For sure.
And by really understanding that, yes, you're the ocean, they're the ocean as well, it puts you in this position where you don't feel separate. Another thing I talk a lot about is how each individual is so unique. There has never, ever been anyone like you out there, and there never will be again. I could go on and tell countless stories of people going in for castings when they initially didn't think they were right. So much of the time, the producers don't know what they want, or the director of the project. A great story about that. My husband, many years ago in New York, misread a casting. He went in. They were looking for an African-American drug dealer.
Okay.
They felt bad because he had come so far, so they let him read. He booked the job.
Wow.
And this kind of thing happens all the time. My daughter's father, one of his first big movies was Hamburger Hill. And when he went in, they were looking for a Italian character. The name was obviously Italian. They changed it to Irish so that he could have the role.
Wow.
But, you know, you walk into a situation and immediately you start judging yourself. You start comparing yourself with the other people. But really, the only thing you're ever competing with is your own negative perception of yourself. If we're each such an individual, there's really no competition.
Absolutely.
We are the ocean.
We are the ocean.
I felt better as soon as I thought that.
Yeah, me too. You also teach Inside Game with your husband, which focuses on getting yourself in a peak performance mindset. How does that differ from your women's workshop?
Yeah, that's interesting. I was talking to a prospective new client yesterday about this. The Shine work is very, very focused on shining and getting more comfortable shining. Whereas the Inside Game workshop does that in its own way, but it's more comprehensive. It's more comprehensive because you can also look at it this way. The Inside Game workshop is 3 days. It's a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'll be doing one in Los Angeles the first 3 days of November. And then Shine is 1 day.
Okay.
So they're both powerful. They're both wonderful. Usually if somebody asks me, I'll say you might want to do Inside Game first.
Okay.
Before you do Shine, because it's more comprehensive.
Gotcha.
We also, in the Inside Game work, which I teach in private sessions to people all over the world all the time as well, we go very deeply into beliefs.
Okay.
Whereas I don't have time in the format with Shine to do that.
Nice. Let's talk about affirmations a little bit. You hear a lot about affirmations and manifesting and
positive thinking.
Yeah. Do affirmations really work? And if so, how do you activate them?
Okay, it's a great thing you're bringing up. Affirmations and visualizing are very interesting. They can be very helpful. The thing is, though, if there's something in the belief system that doesn't buy it, chances are it's not going to happen. Another thing that I've been talking a lot about since February, it's in all the work I do, is that you can want something so much consciously. But if there's a part of the subconscious, unconscious mind that's threatened by it, is insecure around it, the unconscious is always going to win out. And that's why it's really, really important to know how to work with that. Because people, very well-meaning people, can even be taking action. But if that subconscious aspect is not comfortable or feels threatened, again, it's going to get its way.
Why do you think that is?
Well, excuse me for a second here.
Grace has something to say.
Yes. I was speaking to a hypnotherapist, and she was telling me about how people are out there practicing positive thinking and expecting a result when they haven't learned how to navigate unsettled emotions, past traumas, and letting go of them. They're holding on to them, and then they're taking these workshops of positive thinking and adding rather than like releasing and then bringing in.
Yeah, I agree with 100%. The other thing that's really tricky dicky about any kind of positive thinking is that your thoughts and your emotions are doing you. And to try to control any of that is really not helpful. Your thoughts and emotions are happening as spontaneously as your hearts are beating, as your bellies are digesting your food and your intestines. So to keep trying to change your thoughts is very stressful. It's very stressful. As you both know, I teach a lot of different techniques to not take delivery of certain thoughts. Another thing that's very key in my work, and everybody's always saying, oh gosh, I'm so happy I know that now. So, as a matter of fact, I was talking to a client about it yesterday. This is big, guys. Oh, this is so big.
Listen up.
Listen up. One thought is no more significant than another thought. I'm going to screw up this audition is no more significant than I need to pick up toilet paper on the way home. The problem is, though, the mind, going back to conditioning and all of that, makes the scary thought a big deal. I was coming out of a Whole Foods in Sherman Oaks about 3 or 4 years ago, and I got to the stoplight. I was headed to Hugo's for lunch, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I saw the word conditioning in my mind, but now I saw it as conditioning. And what it cons us out of is the present moment, our true potential, and our beautiful, beautiful individuality and uniqueness.
Wow.
It's a big con job.
Wow.
Big con job.
That's insightful. So do you think that is why, I just want to pop back to that question of why the subconscious, if that little kernel of doubt remains within the subconscious, why is that powerful enough to override all of your affirmations? I've written this down 1,000 times, or whatever the case may be, right?
Well, it really goes back to that whole aspect of the survival aspect. You know, we're given all these messages from the time we're born around surviving and how we can survive in our family. That's why so much of what I was speaking to earlier is huge. The literal messages that we're given, you know, from our families about them really thriving and that kind of thing. It's complicated. There's a lot of layers to it. So a lot of people were not brought up in environments where they were brought up by people who were happy. You know, one of the things I shared with both of you when you worked with me is that beautiful saying out of Carl Jung's work: there is no greater influence on a child than the unlived lives of his or her parents. Wow. You know, one of the things I was struck by when I just met your beautiful little daughter is, you know, she's happy.
Yeah.
You know, she's around parents that are pursuing their dreams, that are doing their lives. And there's no greater influence on her than that. And so she's good. She's a very lucky little girl because she's going to grow up not feeling that it's threatening to pursue her dreams.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Some actors tend to be dramatic people by nature. Some may say that most of them are. But sometimes that drama can stem from traumatic experiences. How do you help people let go of their trauma?
Several different techniques. I mean, again, it's really about understanding the source of it, because there's a lot of people who've been traumatized and don't even realize they've been traumatized, or they've blocked it out and that kind of thing. So I guess you could say one of the ways that I approach it is really by helping the individual to become very, very comfortable with themselves, to not feel self-conscious. Of course, I teach several different very powerful techniques to really see emotion for what it really is, because really at its core, what emotion is just energy. Mm-hmm. And when we were all very, very young, even Sedona's age, she's not experiencing different emotions like sadness, happy, frustration, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. She's just experiencing energy, because she hasn't gotten to a place in her neurodevelopment yet where she's really able to understand and see certain things as separate.
Sure.
I guess is the easiest way I can say that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just energy. Mm-hmm. It's also really important to me that people know that there's nothing inherently wrong with them. So much of the time when we've been traumatized in different ways, we blame ourselves somehow, consciously or unconsciously.
Sure.
And it's just about really becoming much more groovy around who and what you are. Mm-hmm. And the trauma, actually, when one is able to move through it, can be a source of great knowledge and such a beautiful way to deal with humanity. Mm-hmm. My husband and I had pretty horrific childhoods in a lot of ways, but now we're grateful for that, because now we use it a lot in our teaching, so to speak, and it makes us very empathetic.
Yes.
And because we've moved through such craziness and chaos, we're able to teach others how to do that as well.
Yeah, and when you've had, negative experiences, very hard, tough things happen to you, you're able to understand and connect with somebody else, I think, in a deeper way than, had you not had those experiences. Yes, could you still understand how this person's going through a tough time and be sympathetic? There is a difference.
Yes.
Than being empathetic and understanding. I know exactly how you feel right now.
Yep.
You're not alone.
Yep. Yeah, when I taught the workshop on Sunday, there was a couple people there who had never worked with me. And this one woman who's a very successful choreographer, she sent me an email later that night. She was completely blown away. And I was very transparent during that workshop, as I always am, about my anxiety, about sexual abuse from my past and all of that. And she said, I have been looking for someone like you. She's going to become a private client of mine now. And,
wow.
And she said, because you're just so freaking honest.
Yeah.
And if I see somebody else has been able to get through it and has the resources to do that, I trust that person.
Absolutely.
That's why transparency is so important. And really knowing that you're in there with your client. One of the things that annoys me about some workshop leaders and that kind of thing is there's this like above quality. Some people actually age regress their audiences, so they're seen as magical mommy or magical daddy. And I think that's very, very unhelpful.
Yeah.
As you guys can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
In terms of business, you have created your own business with you and your husband, your coaches, your teachers, you're helping other people. What actionable insight can you provide to people out there who are struggling with their finances and still trying to make ends meet between their day job and their dream?
Okay, this is great. The first thing that came to mind when you were asking the question, Luke, was this aspect of being bold. Okay? And then you continued to ask the question, and you brought up, the aspect of some people not having the resources. So being bold is radic. So important.
Okay.
Number one. Also asking other people for help. Okay. Other people like helping people. All right. A lot of times when you're feeling less than, you're nervous, you're insecure about taking a big step for your business and that kind of thing, you'll get very shy, you'll get very introverted, and you won't ask for help. And then you get to see like how much other people like to help people.
Absolutely.
It's huge. There's this saying, you really want to be prepared to take the bold action. Sometimes it's about fire, then aim.
Yeah.
This is something that my husband has talked about for years. And it's one of the things that made us so successful right out of the gate 16 years ago when we first started teaching our 3-day workshops.
Yeah.
He's got big balls. And women, for women, it's the ovaries, ovaries and balls are very important in all of this.
Yeah.
And it's about also knowing some people will say no, because the mind is never, ever, 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 ever going to tell you that you're ready.
Yeah.
Well, I'm having a bad day. I'm having a bad hair day. I'm on my period. Mercury's in retrograde. That is one of the goofiest reasons not to take an action. I do believe that it can affect electronics for sure. I have had some of my biggest signups for things, that I'm teaching and workshops that I'm doing when Mercury was in retrograde. But again, it goes back to the mind.
Yeah.
The mind is always looking for a reason to not take an action. The other thing I like to say about the mind, well, I like to say many things about the mind, is the mind is always looking for something negative to glom onto.
Sure.
You can be having the best day in the world, and then one little thing happens, and now the mind is tap dancing around it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Mercury retrograde, I did buy a car once during Mercury retrograde. And man, that thing turned out to be a lemon.
Aw, see, that's more of an electronic kind of thing.
Yeah, it sure was. Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions in registering your business as an LLC or S corp or that type of thing?
That's an interesting question. My husband generally handles all of that. We have a brilliant accountant out here in California, and he said LLC was the way to go for us. So
Okay.
I wouldn't feel comfortable to recommend that to other people. I think it really
Sure.
depends on many different factors in your business. But very quickly after we got here 10 years ago, we were highly recommended to become an LLC, and it has been a very positive thing for us.
Is
And-
that mostly because you tell us why?
I think one of the things we did that our accountant suggested, which was also really helpful from a taxation aspect, is we have a payroll set up for our business.
Okay.
And that seems to have been a very positive thing to do as well,
Okay.
I would say.
Great. Yeah. Did you register in California, or did you take like a Delaware?
No, we're registered in California.
Yeah. Because I know, speaking from experience, the LLCs in California, it's like $800 right out of the gate.
Yes, that's true.
It definitely comes with its cost, but at least you're properly registered
Yes.
with your taxes and everything.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been a really insightful interview and episode. I want to ask you if you could just give our audience one piece of actionable insight today. What would it be?
I would say this. You all know that there's something you've been wanting to take action on. It could be a phone call. It could be setting up a breakfast date or a coffee date with someone. Just do it. Before the end of the day, before, let's say, 10 p.m. this evening, whenever you're hearing this, take the action. Just do it. Before you do it, remember, we're the ocean, appearing as waves. We are the ocean.
That is fantastic advice.
Beautiful.
Take action. Because who was it? Michael Jordan said you miss 100% of the shots that
Yep.
you don't take.
Yeah, he said he failed his way to success.
That's it.
So many people don't realize that failures are going to be along the way with anything. There was a time when people asked us to teach relationship workshops, and we didn't really want to, but we did one, and people loved it, and we realized, you know what, we don't want to do that. That's not our thing. We would
Sure.
rather be putting our resources and, work out there in different ways.
Sure.
One could say, well, was that a failure? I don't think so. We gave the people what they asked for and decided that we weren't turned on by doing that.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. So if our audience wants to connect with you further after this episode, what's the best way to contact you?
Probably be to go to the website, www.insidegame.com. We actually have 4 free intros happening over the next 2 weeks in Los Angeles.
Fantastic.
That you can sign up for that on the website. And I feel to also mention my husband's amazing acting classes. He teaches 2 classes here in Los Angeles and travels to New York once or twice a year to teach there. They're extraordinary. There's nothing out there like them. He uses a lot of our techniques to help ground the actor, and get the actor in a place where they're able to be in their truth.
Okay.
It's very much about being in the moment, and some really exciting things are happening for a lot of his students.
And if so we've got some actors out there listening to this, if they want to connect with him, is it the same website for that?
No, I would say to go to his acting website. You can also read a lot of testimonials. There's an incredible article an interview that he did that you can also access there, and that's simply his name, www.robertcolt.com.
Fantastic. And of course, you can always contact us at showtimemeetsbusiness@gmail.com and on Instagram under the handle Showtime Meets Business. That's it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. We always appreciate our listeners. I'm Luke.
And I'm Grace.
And this is Showtime
Meets Business.